Hi there. Nice to see you again. I haven't been here for a while, and I apologize for missing so much time. I've really missed you, and well, you probably have missed me, but it's nice to be back in your space again. I've actually been asked to put together a couple of videos that sort of show how and what happens when we prepare our transport nodes, and what makes those in NSX-T data center, and what makes those transport nodes interact, and how we get that ready to deploy our logical switching and our logical routing. So in this first one, I'm just going to put together a quick diagram to show how, in fact, the transport nodes get prepared, and then in the next video, I'm going to show you how the logical switches and logical routers interact. We call them now gateways and segments, as you know. So we'll get to that as we go forward in the second video. So what I'm going to do is, with this first diagram, I'm going to go to the whiteboard and I'm going to lay out an example where maybe I have, say, two ESXi hosts that are going to carry workloads, a KVM host that's going to carry workloads. So those are going to be three hypervisor transport nodes. ESXi, say O1, ESXi, O2, and KVM. Just so we can see kind of a mixture. And then off to the side here a little bit, I'm going to put another ESXi host that I'm going to call my ESXi edge host. It's actually going to be a host that's going to contain an edge VM node, a transport node taking the place of an edge VM node. Now, to get the hypervisor nodes ready to operate, we're going to deploy the ESXi host using vCenter as a compute manager to prep them correctly, and then I'm going to use the NSX manager to actually prep the KVM transport node, and then I'll use the NSX manager to deploy the edge transport node. And the way that's going to look diagrammatically is I'm going to take and deploy to each of these hosts what will become the overlay N-VDS. I'm going to label it O N-VDS. That's my overlay N-VDS. And that's going to be defined by the transport zone that I set up. Most of you have gone through this already, so you kind of understand a transport zone and the N-VDS are going to be working together to lay out the total span of the logical switches and logical routers, or segments and gateways, that are going to be invoked. When I deploy, I'm asked to put a pool of IP addresses. Now that pool of IP addresses is going to be used for the TEP, the tunneling endpoint that gets used for each of these hosts. And the TEP, of course, is going to act as the overlay tunnel, the endpoint that provides the overlay tunnel. One thing that I didn't draw yet is the fact that there is going to be an uplink on that N-VDS on each of the hosts, and the uplink will of course be mapped directly to the physical NIC that the transport nodes have. So the uplinks are going to be tied to the physical NIC or a link aggregation group, if in fact you had multiple NICs that were going to be associated there. Next, in order to prepare the edge node, I will create a VLAN N-VDS. So I'm going to label that VNVDS. That VLAN N-VDS also having an uplink, which will also map to a network card on the ESXi host. That's for the KVM, or excuse me, the edge, it can only be in an ESXi, the edge transport node. So I'm overlaying that, if you would, onto the ESXi hosting the edge node. And you see that both of those are going to be listed there. Now, as we go forward with this diagram in the next module, the next video that I create, I'm going to show you how VM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in this diagram are going to connect to segments or logical switches, and how those logical switches will end up interacting with each of the N-VDS and carrying the transport. Oh, speaking of carrying the transport, I'm missing a major part of my diagram. These hosts all sitting here and going to behave as transport nodes, and that overlay N-VDS won't communicate at all if there isn't an underlay set up here. So I'm going to draw out the fabric in kind of a quick little switch with a couple of VLANs, a top VLAN and a bottom VLAN. Now I actually do have to plug in wires. This guy's got a physical cable that's going to plug in, and this one is going to plug into that VLAN, the lower half VLAN. So now I've got the underlay set, the transport nodes created, and in the next video we will go through how the logical switching segments and the logical gateways or virtual gateways or distributed gateways or tier 1 and tier 0 gateways, they're all logical routers, how they exist in this diagrammatic form. So that's part 1. If you want, come right back and get part 2 on the logical switching and distributed routing. Thanks for being here.
The Gandalf, the Mr.